Hello everyone and welcome to the EDH Jank Center, your source for everything Commander and everything Jank. I'm your host, Jordan the Prairies, you can call me either. Now listen, today we got a list of my favorite cards from my favorite place on earth, baby. New Capenna. Capiche? And today we're gonna... Whoa, okay, gee, okay, I'm walking out, okay? How did you get in here? So sorry about that, guys. Oh, he actually left something here. Top 10 cards from New Capenna. That sounds really fun, actually. Let's pick up where he left off. So before he left, he actually left a note that said, this is not necessarily a top 10 tier list. This is just 10 of my favorite, his favorite cards from New Capenna. All right, that was a near minute-long bit. Let's get to the actual cards, baby. Let's go. First card we have up today is Jetmir, Nexus of Revels 1, and Naya, which is red, green, and white. Legendary creature Cat Demon from Streets of New Capenna. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have Vigilance as long as you control 3 or more creatures. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have Trample as long as you control 6 or more creatures. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and have Double Strike as long as you control 9 or more creatures. And he is a 5/4. So a little bit of background, when I first found out that they were going to do a gangster-themed set, I was over the moon. For those of you who don't know, I am half Italian, and I was dreaming once the set was spoiled about creating an Italian deck, like getting it all fully altered out and just really playing into that. And then this guy dropped and I was like, oh my god, this is literally perfect. So Jetmir in the lore is already a mob boss. He's the head of the Cabaretti, which is an Italian last name. His colors are red, green, and white, which guess what, baby? It's the colors of the Italian flag. It's literally perfect. Anyways, aside from being flavorfully perfect to me, let's get down to the stats because he's actually a really amazing commander. So obviously with this deck, you're going to want to do tokens. His ability scales with how many creatures you have on the battlefield. So if you have 3 or more creatures, all of your creatures get a +1/+0 buff and all get Vigilance. And as you increase the number of creatures on your board, you end up getting Trample for all your creatures, and then Double Strike if you end up getting 9 or more creatures, which in Naya colors is not hard at all, folks. And what's really cool about Jetmir is he also is a pseudo Voltron. As you get your board larger and larger, his abilities don't say other creatures. They affect him as well. So if you have 10 or more creatures on the field, pow, he's got Vigilance, Double Strike, and Trample, and he'll be an 8/4. When I build him, I think I'm going to take it in a Spell Slinger direction as well, so that's something really unique you can do with him. There's lots of token generating instants such as Raise the Alarm and many others that I plan on using in sort of a Storm, Spell Slinging, creating tokens build, and I'm really excited for that. He's a very chunky, sexy, spicy Italian meatball. You should purchase him and make a dope token deck out of it. All right, coming up next is another chonky boy. It's Shakedown Heavy. 2 and a black creature ogre warrior from Streets of New Capenna. He has Menace. Whenever Shakedown Heavy attacks, defending player may have you draw a card. If they do, untap Shakedown Heavy and remove it from combat, and they're a 6/4. So these stats are crazy. 3 mana for a 6/4 with Menace? Dude, what? This card is in the same family as other chunky boys like Desecration Demon and Clackbridge Troll, in that they're big creatures with big power and toughness for less mana than is typical, because if you swing out or if you move to combat, your opponents can choose to tap down the creature and then you get a benefit still. I think this card's pretty good at any point in the game. Early game, you can start swinging out and people will probably just choose not to take the 6 damage and let you draw a card, which, you know, is like crack to a Magic player. I'd say it's even more potent in the late game. You suit this guy up with a Sword of Feast and Famine and you swing at someone, they're probably going to opt to not take the damage and let you draw a card, which can let you draw into more answers, more gas, whatever you need to keep going and hopefully close out the game. Or your opponents are thinking, nah, you've drawn enough cards in the game, I'm just going to take the 6. That's 6 damage, guys. That's a good chunk of life. And if they're doing that every single turn cycle, that can add up. But I think more than all of that, and you're going to see this for a lot of the cards in this list, I think the flavor is just absolutely spectacular. For those who don't know, I am an actor as well, and I've watched my fair share of gangster movies, and all the references in this set to gangster culture and things like that, and cinema in general, is just really amazing and so much fun to look at and read all the flavor texts, all the cheeky quips and quotes that they include. The design of the set is just so spectacular, and Shakedown Heavy is no exception. Speaking of, this next card is in here purely for the flavor. We got Patch Up, 2 and a white sorcery from Streets of New Capenna.
return up to 3 target creature cards with total mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you know me, I don't ever sleep on janky cards anyways. This card is pretty good recursion, honestly. It can really work well in like a 1-drop tribal deck. Maybe like Nethroi would be really fun to run this in. So you basically sack all your 1-drops, you get some aristocracy triggers going on, and then you can recur them with patch up and do the whole cycle over again. Or if you want to be more utilitarian about it, you can also be recurring your value pieces like Esper Sentinel and stuff like that. But above all that, I just really love the flavor text on this. Don't tell me who sent you or who you work for. The less I know, the better. So the artist Scott Murphy really crushed this artwork and sets the scene perfectly. This reluctant doctor who wants to save lives but doesn't want to be wrapped up in whatever awful, morally corrupt things these people are doing. Maybe he's protecting a lover, a family, some covetous item that he owns that he knows the criminals would want. Whatever the case may be, this card is super compelling and I just really love it a lot. Provokes the imagination, if you will. Anyways, moving on to the next card, which is Gala Greeters, 1 and a green creature elf druid from Streets of New Capenna. It has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on Gala Greeters, create a tapped treasure token, you gain 2 life, and it's a 1/1. So here we have some members from my favorite family from New Capenna, the Cabaretti. Yeah, what are you gonna do about it? This card works great in a token deck. If you're making a bunch of creatures, if you can make 3 creatures on your turn, Gala Greeters is gonna trigger 3 separate times, and you're gonna get the most value out of the card. You're gonna be buffing up Gala Greeters every time you make a token. Then the next time you make a token, you're gonna be ramping yourself for your next turn because the treasures come in tapped, unfortunately. And then on the 3rd time you create a creature, you gain 2 life. What's not to love about this card? And it's a 2-drop, it comes down early. It's really great. But the best part of this card, the reason I've included it in the list, are these incredible freaking alternate arts in all these different languages from all across the globe. I mean, look at these. Wow. Oh, wow. Just wow. One of my personal collector goals in my life is to own all of the Gala Greeters from all the different countries. Anyways, let's move on from this party to the next. Although this guy actually doesn't look like he's going to a party, more so like he's going to murder someone, but potato. This sneaky devil is Illuminator Virtuoso, 1 and a white creature human rogue from Streets of New Capenna. He has double strike. Whenever Illuminator Virtuoso becomes the target of a spell you control, it connives, which means draw a card, then discard a card. If you discarded a non-land card, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature, and he starts out as a 1/1. So I really love this card for any Voltron build. I've talked on this channel before about redundancy, how if you're building a deck where your commander has a certain strategy, you want other cards in the deck that do similar things so that if someone's targeting your commander and you can't play it anymore, you got too much commander tax to pay or whatever, you still have cards in the deck that you can do similar things with so you're not just stuck doing nothing the rest of the game. All that being said, I think the commanders that would really work with this are just any that would lend themselves to a Voltron strategy. So something like Light Paws would be cool to run this in, as well as Uriel could be cool to run this in. The double strike on a 2-drop really just makes this potent as hell. But what makes this different, because this is not an original card, a 2-drop with double strike is just Fencing Ace. Now, while I love this handsome devil, this guy connives. So we suit this guy up with equipment, auras, what have you. People are going to want to target it and get rid of it because they don't want to die to it. However, when they do that, we get some benefits from it, which I think puts it above Fencing Ace, unfortunately. While I love you, man. Hey, you know what? We're going to put you in the deck list too. How about that? How does that feel? Great. Hey, I'm just happy you're happy. But you know what would make me even happier? Moving on to the next card. Next up, we got Psychic Pickpocket, 4 and a blue creature, Cephalid Rogue from Streets of New Capenna. When Psychic Pickpocket enters the battlefield, it connives. When it connives this way, return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. And again, when a creature connives, you draw a card, then discard a card, and if that card is a non-land, you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature. So first of all, I just want to say I love how many creatures as of late that have come out that really look like Davy Jones from Pirates of the Caribbean 2. Like, props to whoever designed all these cards. Maybe one day I'll make a Davy Jones tribal deck and send it to Bill Nye. Bill Nye, not Bill Nye. Bill Nye. But, and more importantly, this card has a really cool enter the battlefield ability. So the first thing it does when it enters is we start to loot. We get to draw a card and maybe get rid of something that we don't really need in our hand. And if we get rid of something that we don't need in our hand that's not a land, we get to buff up the pickpocket. And then when it connives, we get to bounce a permanent back to someone's hand, whether that be our opponent's pesky creature or a creature or something of our own that we want to ETB and trigger again and again, like a Muldrifter, for example. Now, for 5 mana, a lot of people would stray away from this card just because it does cost so much. However, the way I would like to use it in a deck, we can skirt around that mana cost, or at least make it worth our while. So I'm thinking Orvar, the all form for this handsome Squidman. That's Squid Man turned into one word, Squidman. It's his last name. If you didn't know, that's actually part of the lore. But anyways, what you can do here is you have Orvar on the field, you play Psychic Pickpocket, you pay the 5 mana once, and then if he remains on the field, you can just start targeting him with little 1-drops like you do in Orvar and creating tons and tons of copies of this Pickpocket. After that, you're getting tons of ETBs, which means you're getting tons of Connive triggers, you're drawing a bunch of cards, discarding a bunch of cards, buffing up all your Pickpockets, and you're bouncing a bunch of opponents' stuff back to their hands. And you can honestly clear the way for a nice attack, which typically Orvar is not really an offensive commander. However, this card could potentially open the doorway for that kind of strategy. And on top of everything else, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, because this is the EDH Jank Center, this card is 2 cents. Come on. All right, here we go. Next card is Witty Roastmaster, 2 in a red, creature Devil Citizen from Streets of New Capenna. It has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Witty Roastmaster deals 1 damage to each opponent, and he's a 3/2. So I am a huge fan of Group Slug. I have a Delina Wild Mage deck that I'm such a big fan of that makes a tons of copies and deals a bunch of damage to my opponents all at the same time. And this card is a welcome addition to any card that wants to Group Slug or just create a bunch of tokens. This card is just another Impact Tremors, which is a welcome addition to any collection of mine. Let's say you have this card in Jetmir, for example, which this card is a member of the Cabaretti. Let's freaking go, boys. You play Raise the Alarm and you create 2 1/1 soldiers. Well, then all of your opponents are taking 2 damage. And if you have this and Impact Tremors out on the field, all your opponents are taking 4 damage. And obviously it scales from there. And also, who doesn't want a stand-up comedian in their deck? I mean, come on. But okay, coming up, we got Rumor Gatherer, 1 white creature elf wizard from Streets of New Capenna. She also has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, draw a card instead. And she's a 2/1. So if you couldn't tell, I'm a token guy, and I just really love the Alliance ability, and this card is no exception. The first time a creature enters the battlefield under your turn, you get to scry 1, you get to look at the top card of your deck, choose whether or not you want to keep it on top or put it on the bottom, and then if you make another creature directly after that, pow, you're drawing a card. So yeah, she's great in any and all token builds, honestly, that run white, and she costs not that much money, not that much mana for what she does. I think she's great, and flavorfully, she is amazing. She's kind of giving Steve Buscemi from like Spy Kids 2, I think, with all like the miniature animals. You know what I'm talking about. And my parting thought on this card is just me reading the flavor text for you. It's delightful, the things their owners reveal when they think no one is listening. So this next card, honestly, the last 2 cards on this list are both from the Commander sets from Streets of New Capenna, and I know that they're technically different, but they're basically the same to me. I'm sorry. But also, like, I'm not. Anyways, oh, look who's here. It's Kroos, Defense Contractor, 1 and Bant, which is green, white, and blue. Legendary creature Cat Advisor from the Commander sets from Streets of New Capenna. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a shield counter on target creature an opponent controls. Whenever you put 1 or more counters on a creature you don't control, tap that creature and goad it. It gains trample until your next turn. And he's a 2/4. So in addition to being a token guy, I am also a forced combat guy, and I have talked about Kroos before on this channel. I still need to do a full deck tech on him, so if you really want to hear a deck tech about this guy, let me know in the comments and I might make that my next video. But anyways, yeah, I just love the flavor. You get to put shield counters on creatures, but they get to be goaded. And honestly, more than just shield counters, any counters you put on opponents' creatures goads them until your next turn. So this card opens up a bunch of possibilities for a lot of otherwise janky cards, and you know we love jank here on the Jank Center. I won't go into full detail, I'll leave that for the deck tech. However, this opens up the avenues for cards like Evolutionary Escalation, Sheltering Ancient, and Nil's Discipline Enforcer, just to name a few. All cards that put +1/+1 counters on our opponent's creatures, thus goading them. Also, Proliferate really works well. If you can continue to do it with something like Karn's Bastion, you'll keep your opponent's creatures goaded the entire game. And just like that, we are at the last card of the list, guys. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you like the content, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know if you like the video, any other cards from New Capenna that you really enjoy that you want me to include in another list, perhaps. I'm always down there in the comments replying to everyone, so come on down and geek out with me. Alright, so the last card on the list is the Beamtown Bullies. 1 and Jund or Yund, black, red, and green legendary creature Ogre Devil Warrior from Streets of New Capenna Commander, Vigilance and Haste. You can tap it, and target opponent whose turn it is puts target non-legendary creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield under their control. It gains Haste. Goad it. At the beginning of your next end step, exile it. And on top of all that, it's a 4/4. So I first saw this played on game nights, and I could not believe how insane it was. It's mean. It's very mean. It's super mean. In fact, it's not even really my playstyle. I just included it on the list because I think it's such a unique and fun ability. It belongs in that same family as Zedru and also Ineaz. A lot of people don't talk about Ineaz. I might do a deck tech because that's a personal deck of mine. But what they all have in common is that they enable cards that are normally very, very bad in the format to be able to be used, and I just love the spirit of that. Like, I've always wanted to put Leveler in a deck. That's just such a dumb card, and the Beamtown Bullies actually makes it a viable strategy. Would I ever build it? Would I ever use it in a deck? Absolutely not. That's very, very mean. But the fact that you can is just really fun, and it shows the infinite possibilities of all the things that they can do within this game that we all love. And you know what? I'm looking at this artwork and I'm thinking, this guy looks awfully familiar. Wait, was he in my room? Okay, I gotta go figure this out. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you really enjoyed the video, make sure you go check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. I got lots of cool benefits for patrons. Thank you so much for sticking around again. I'll see you on the next video.